With politicians in midterm mode, the Republican Party is turning its focus to Latino voters.
That's right. The GOP is hoping to capitalize on the apparent shift of voters in certain states. Republicans first caught wind of this movement in 2020 when Latino support for former President Trump rose by 3% compared to 2016. And with the number of Latinos running for Congress this election cycle, the House could see Hispanic Republicans in Congress increase by 50%.
CBS News correspondent Enrique Acevedo joins us now. Hey there, Enrique. So tell us, what were some of the driving factors behind the shift in Latino support of Trump in 2020?
Hi. Well, it really varies from case to case. Data suggests that country of origin is at the top of the list of factors that are playing a role in this shift, and U.S. policy towards places like Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. Let me give you an example here in South Florida. Doral is the city with the largest Venezuelan American population in the entire country. It's in Miami-Dade County. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won there by a very comfortable margin. And then in 2020, President Trump was able to pull off a victory in Doral, a Democratic bastion, by a little under 2%. The reason why that happened is because President Trump was very aggressive in his policy towards Venezuela, recognizing the leader of the opposition, Juan Guaido, as a legitimate president, inviting him to his State of the Union. So a lot of Venezuelan Americans, exiles, people who were forced to leave Venezuela during the last decade, saw that as a positive sign and decided to support President Trump. That's just one example, but like I said, it really varies from case to case.
It is such a diverse population, the Latino community. How much do you expect to see that variety of factors really reflected during the midterms?
That's an excellent question. Right now, today, the vast majority of eligible Latino voters, over 2/3 of all eligible Latino voters in the country, are U.S. born. They're not first-generation immigrants, right? So we can expect them to start behaving more and more like the rest of the electorate. And that means trending more conservative. And they've been following those patterns since the 2018 midterms, the 2020 presidential election, and I expect that to continue through these midterms as well. On issues from the economy to abortion, they're starting to behave more and more like the rest of the electorate.
I want to follow up on this point because, as Elaine points out, Latino voter is really such a broad term. There's so many different communities within that demographic. Are you seeing not just a difference in whether you were born in the United States, but in the different ideological divides within the groups?
Absolutely. Again, using South Florida as an example, there are around 4.7 million people living in this region, and the majority of them are Latinos, Hispanics. Traditionally, in the 1990s, you talk about a cohesive bloc, the Cuban-American bloc. It was a reliable Republican constituency, right? That's changed in the last 30 years. We see now Venezuelan Americans who are also part of that reliable Republican bloc, but you have people coming from Puerto Rico. U.S. citizens that have established themselves in places like Orlando, or Colombians, Mexicans, Dominicans. So it's really it shows you the diversity within this voting group, and that has also impacted the way elections go here in Florida, and of course, because of the importance this state has in our national politics, the way that reflects in presidential elections as well.
So, Enrique, given that influence in the conversations that you've had with various campaigns, what do both Democrats and Republicans feel they need to do to bring in more Latino votes in the midterms?
Well, we've always dealt with this myth of the sleeping giant when it comes to Latino voters, right? People have this notion that Latino voters are disengaged or not enthusiastic about the political process. But I think we've all come to realize that's a myth. They are in the sense that they're just as enthusiastic, as engaged as anyone else. But parties, Republicans, Democrats, need to invest more resources, more time. Candidates need to spend more time getting to know these communities, understanding what their priorities are, again, investing money in trying to reach them and getting them, sort of meeting them, in the middle ground, to have them as engaged and as enthusiastic as they are about the political process, and reflect that in participation and support for those candidates. So I think the big lesson in this past couple of elections has been invest in the Latino community, get them engaged, get them fired up, and they will come out and vote.
A growing part of the electorate. Enrique Acevedo. Enrique, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.